And the stewardess on the flying Tiger Airlines, oh, you big bad boys scared of landing in an airplane? These guys were all with the 173rd. They had never landed before. They'd always jumped out. And the stewardess just shook her head. So anyway, we landed. We ended up hanging. We got to Seattle. Got discharged at Fort Lewis. We met at the airport. And we ended up going down to flying to San Francisco. And from that, for the next 2.5 weeks, I don't know what I did. I got home like August 15th to Fairhaven. And my mother cried because I haven't been home for 2.5 years. And all this other stuff. And I decided I was going to go back in. The hell with it. So I went out and I had about $10,000 saved up. I went out and I bought a Shelby, which I totaled the day I bought it. And I ended up coming down to South Yarmouth, or West Yarmouth, to a party. A bunch of guys that I went to high school with. And I never left. I went back in the service, like I said, in '72, and that only lasted a month. I ended up rooming with 3 other guys who were in Vietnam. We never knew each other over there, but there were 3 Green Berets, me, and that was it. And we lived together for a year. We went to 4 Seas for a year, and out of the 4 of us, I'm the only one still alive. One guy died in '72. My buddy Kevin, who was with the 173rd, he died 3 years ago, and everybody died from Agent Orange related illnesses. David never got out. David stayed in. He had 3 PhDs. He's about 6'3". He had 3 PhDs. He was a cop, and he went back in, and he stayed in Special Forces till he was 62. He was an instructor, E9 down in Fort Bragg, and he taught criminal justice at some community college right outside of Fort Bragg in Fayetteville. And that's it.
So being in the special forces, that takes a lot of determination, and skill, and stuff. And
I wasn't assigned to a special forces.
Oh, you
I
weren't?
didn't have the MOS. No.
Oh,
I worked with them. I went through all the training, but I wasn't old enough.
oh. And if you were old enough, would you have been?
Yeah, I would have made it. I went through all the training they did. I just wasn't old enough, and I didn't have enough service. You had to have 3 years active military service. But I went back when I went in '72. I went to the 10th up to Fort Devens. I qualified to join that unit, and that's when I flunked the hearing test. I had a physical. You had to have what they call a straight picket fence, which is all ones, and I had a 1-1-1. And when it came to the hearing, I had a 3. I lost all my hearing abilities over there. I didn't know it.
And were you on the Rangers? You said.
I can't go there.
Oh.
I was with the Rangers.
Yeah.
I wasn't a Ranger. I didn't have a tab.
So you weren't qualified for a lot of stuff because of your age. And you said something about Agent Orange, and not how all your friends have been dying from it.
Now we found that out. Yeah.
And the Agent Orange was the Americans dumped that.
They used it as a defoliant. The LZ that I was at, which was LZ Hammond, my original LZ, turns out to have the highest concentration of Agent Orange in the world. And I currently have systemic heart disease, 7 stents, and a whole bunch of other stuff, all directly related to that. I'm currently 30% disabled. I will be 100% within the next month.
So this is
all from Agent Orange.
How does that make you feel? That
How does it make me feel? It doesn't bother me. It's something that I did happen.
Now going back to before the military, so you were like a normal kid, just
not normal. I mean, I didn't like people. I would I'd go out and I'd hike and camp as long as I was alone. I spent most of my time in the woods. You know, I'd go up to Maine, I'd go up to New Hampshire. I'd spend half the summer up there alone. I'd go out, Mattapoisett, different places around Fayetteville. A lot of woodland back there. I loved to camp. I loved the woods, which has ended up, when I went in the service, that's what I ended up. I did a lot of survival skills before I went in. Yeah. And I just honed them when I was in there.
So going into the military and learning all those survival skills, were you were obviously happy about it, about being alone?
I wasn't happy.
Mm.
I just didn't care.
Mm.
I was devoid of feelings most of the time.
Um, the basic training. How you said you only had 8 weeks, was it?
I had 7 weeks of
Seven,
basic.
7 weeks. And how long does a soldier usually have?
8.
8.
See, when I went in, the period of time I was in, they kicked the shit out of you. There was no such thing as this nice stuff that you can't. People can't slap them. I mean, I had people have teeth knocked out. Some of the trainings I went through, I was physically really abused. I went through an E&E school, escape and evasion, which was a week, and they captured you and they beat the living shit out of you. They put you in wall lockers with snakes, and they had you hang up by your thumbs, and they beat on you with rubber hoses. And that's what they did. A lot of guys didn't like it. They quit.
And compared to now, basic training?
I don't have a clue what it's about now. All I know is that what I understand now is if you don't like it, you can get out. If your mother writes a letter, you can get out. I mean, I don't have. I know a couple of guys that went in. I know a couple of guys that were like Delta that are in now. Kids that I knew that my son's ages, and they got out because it started getting too pussified for them.
And so do you think that the basic training and stuff and the training, that should all be like hard and very physically demanding?
It should be.
Mm.
It should be to let people know what they're going to be in for if they ever get, when they get in combat. Combat is not a lot of fun. Combat is not like you see in these silly ass movies, Rambo and all that other stuff. I mean, the closest movie that I've ever seen, I've only watched it once because I don't like watching, is Apocalypse Now. It's the closest I've ever seen to what Vietnam was really like. But it's not a glorified thing. It's no fun doing what we did. Now, back then, when you're 18, 19, 20, 21, different ball of wax. You're indestructible. I'm 64 years old now. I don't know why.
And looking back, with the knowledge you have now and stuff, would you have still gone into the military?
I wouldn't have gotten out. One of my biggest what ifs is I should have stayed. I got close to 200 friends that are on the wall.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to go there, still can't. But that's it.
And you stopped because of your hearing, or what?
I had to get out. The only way I'd go back in is if I could get like in the special forces or an airborne unit. And they were getting so picky. Vietnam was winding down, so they were making, putting all these physical rules on, and I couldn't pass the hearing test to stay in, to be with special forces, and I didn't want to be alike. So that was that.
Yeah.
I went through a lot of schools. I went through all the training, with a lot of these guys, and most of my friends, probably 75% of my friends were all Green Berets. And I had 3 friends of mine who were originals. They got their Green Berets from JFK. They were there at Bragg when Kennedy gave them to them. But, that was them. Then now it's a different story.
And I remember you talking before about how you were when Martin Luther King Jr. talked.
When I was at Fort Belknap, prior to going to OCS, they pulled about 300 of us for guard duty, and that's when they had the tent city in Washington, 65, and Martin Luther King was speaking, and we were there pulling guard duty. We had an M14 rifle and 3 bullets, and nobody would have shot anybody anyway. We were too busy listening to them, but they had us there for guard duty.
Tell me, knowing he's about all peace and stuff, what do you think of him?
I thought he was a great man. I mean, I always did. He was nonviolent. He wasn't all about peace. He was about nonviolence.
Yeah.
About civil rights and about treating your fellow man equally. It wasn't about war and peace. It was about what you do at home. Because see, I had a job to do that 99% of the people didn't want. See, and I remember about 6 years ago, I was in San Francisco with my ex-wife, and I just froze at the airport. She goes, "What's wrong?" I said, "This looks like the terminal